Welcome to the Candid Wisdom Podcast. I'm your host, Twyla Williams, and today we're going to be talking about the roast of Kevin Hart and who came out on top. This week, we saw an excellent example of what loving your enemy actually looks like. When Katt Williams graciously and humbly agreed to show up for the Kevin Hart roast. Katt emerged as the front runner of Truth Tellers Revolution and exposed Kevin as a gatekeeper in the industry. And just as a reminder, let's listen to what Katt had to say back then.
In 15 years in Hollywood, no one in Hollywood has a memory of going to a sold-out Kevin Hart show, there being a line for him ever getting a standing ovation at any comedy club. He already had his deals when he got here. Have we heard of a comedian that came to L.A. and in his first year in L.A. he had his own sitcom on network television and had his own movie called Soul Plane that he was leading? No, we've never heard of that before that person or since that person. What do you think a plant is? Maybe people don't understand the definitions of these words.
So back then, Katt put Kevin and all the other people in the industry on notice that we were no longer accept who they tell us to watch and who they tell us to love. And that made a fast enemy of Kevin. Katt was the first to announce that the truth movement was taking over. Now, Katt, being a man of God, he claims to be, and his actions back that up, had to consider what he said. And I think after some prayer and some consideration, he actually went on to issue an apology to Kevin Hart. Now, this was prior to the roast. Let's have a listen at what he had to say.
I also owe a humongous apology to Kevin Hart, and I should have never mentioned Kevin Hart's name. That is the reigning king of comedy if you ask for popular consensus. So now the fact that he's a black man like me and the fact that I attacked him with such vitriol at a time when our country is already divided in every way it could be divided, racially, politically, economically, socially, religiously. Like the fact that I, while being on stage pretending to be higher than that, would then stoop down to the same level and try to embarrass Kevin Hart in front of his children and loved ones after all the hard work he's done since the year 2002 is just regrettable on my part. So I humbly apologize to not only Kevin Hart, but Heartbeat Productions, the Plastic Cup Boys, and anybody associated with Kevin Hart. That was a mistake on my part. It doesn't matter. I don't need an excuse. I'm sorry for having mentioned Kevin's name at all.
Now, that is what a true heartfelt apology looks like and sounds like. It looks like Katt reflected on what he had done, regretted it, and then issued an apology. And I don't think he did it for any other reason than the fact that he felt that he was not loving his enemy, that he was not doing what the Lord had called him to do. Because if you listen to what he said he's up there pretending like, he's doing a good thing, but knowing in his heart that he was not. And after some reflection, he changed his mind. And people will say, well, then why did he show up for the roast? Well, in my opinion, Katt didn't show up and do this for the money. He did not show up and do this for the money. And in fact, we'll hear him say that later on in this video. But I don't want you to think that Katt let Kevin off easy. No, he took him to task, and he let him know that he did not forget about what he had done or what he perceived he had done, but the two things could exist at the same time. He could not like what Kevin did or is, and also come out and redeem this person and his career, knowing that it means something to Kevin for him to do that. So let's have a listen to what Katt had to say at the roast. Now, I didn't bleep out, I think, a couple of curse words. So hopefully all y'all very good and proper Christians don't get offended by the few swear words that are in here. Let's have a listen.
Hello, Kevin.
Hello, Katt.
I'm surprised they invited me. That's how little star power you have. They had to start inviting your enemies. I said I hate him. They said come anyway. For the people at home, you're wondering, why is the Katt Man doing this? For the money, bitch. This is my Riyadh Comedy Festival. Only one with a soul.
Now, like I said, I doubt very seriously that there's anybody in the industry who needs money less than Katt Williams. He's notoriously generous. And he says here himself, let's listen to what he says in this clip from the Club Shay Shay show.
One of the richest men that ever lived. And I don't mean, please don't look at my net worth. I saw my net worth. I had that on me.
I love that line from the Club Shay show. I had that on me, and I'm sure that he did. I mean, you don't have to look far to find stories of Katt's generosity, and I think what he did in this roast was also a very generous thing. He did it to signal to us that we, the people, are the ones who have the real power. See, we're the ones who they want to influence. And therefore, whatever we say goes. And if Katt says this guy's a plant and don't trust him, and we know Katt to be a truth teller, then we don't trust them and we don't watch their movies and we don't go to their shows and we don't promote their work. And that can make or break a career. Now, when one man's word can make or break your career, then you don't have any power. When you have to pay someone to tell others to come and watch your show, and that person says whether or not you can mess with them or not mess with them, and despite all of the industry money and all of the big wigs that Kevin has back in his career, he still needed Katt's endorsement. Katt is standing for something bigger than an industry beef. This is not about an industry beef. This is about the truth setting us all free. This is about loving your enemy. And this is about standing against the demasculation of men, especially in the African-American community. This is not a Black thing, but Katt is pointing out that, these comedians need to stop wearing dresses and stop selling out. So he came out to the roast to prove that loving your enemy is possible. And I believe he came out the bigger and better person because of it. Now, people are trying to drive this controversy into saying that Katt said something into Kevin's ear, but he showed up and he gave Kevin back his right to be a comedian and to try to win the hearts of the people again. And to show that he wouldn't stand in his way of doing that. Now it's on Kevin to show and prove how he's going to act, or, whether or not his comedy gets any better, but that's all on Kevin. At least we know that Katt is not the one that is holding him back. What Katt ultimately proved is that we can do good for those who persecute us without changing the circumstances. And this is why Jesus told us to love our enemies, and why most people still don't do it. See, the greatest form of spiritual warfare is not screaming at darkness. It's not proving that you have the right to be right, but it's refusing to become what it is that has hurt you. Our anger is keeping us chained to the very people who hurt us. And that's happening all the time. I've seen this happen to some of my favorite content creators. They get so caught up in the story. They get so caught up in proving that this person who isn't who we think they are, that they start to look more like the person that they don't want us to be than they did when they started. See, every time we think about what they did, we create another knot in the chain that binds us to that pain, to that painful memory. Jesus didn't say, destroy your enemies. He didn't even say, expose your enemies. He didn't say, humiliate your enemies either. He said, love your enemies. And honestly, that sounds impossible until you understand what love actually does. Have you seen those experiments where people say kind words over water and it changes the makeup of the water? Let's watch this video together.
We can actually change the structure of our water by the words that we speak. I already made a video about this, but I wanted to show you guys images of what the water structures look like if you have different intentions, different thoughts, different words that you speak to the water. So if you say thank you, look how beautiful this water structure is, versus if you say you disgust me, or you fool, or you're evil. But this is so important because we are made mostly of water. This demonstrates how important our thoughts, our words, our intentions are that we hold towards ourselves. The words that we think, the intentions that we feel actually make structural changes, that's very difficult to say, in our body.
Like she said, we are mostly made of water. So could it be that we're changing our enemies on a cellular level whenever we speak kind words over them? See, we live in a culture that's fueled by outrage, right? And this is what we see every day in mainstream media and all of our television shows and all of our entertainment. It's just fueled by all kinds of outrage and anger and separation. People clap when they see somebody getting destroyed publicly. We even laugh at people falling in the mud and getting hurt. People celebrate when someone gets revenge. That's why all of these shows are so popular, when people are fighting going on. And people call hatred strength, right? But Jesus flips that entire paradigm upside down, because hate only multiplies hate. And pride multiplies pride. Violence multiplies violence. And when you strike back in the flesh, you often become what you are saying that you hated. That's why the scripture says in Luke chapter 6, verse 27 and 8, but to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you, and bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. That is not being passive or weakness. When we master this, that is real spiritual authority. And when you don't, people get a feeling about you that is similar to what this person in the video is about to express. We do not want people walking away from an encounter with the kingdom ambassador feeling like this. Let's have a listen.
Christians, they rub everybody the wrong way, and that's something that just turns a lot of people away from that religion stuff. And it'll be just because what? You disagree with them. That give them an excuse to be mean, to belittle you, to pray for the worst things that happen to you, all because you disagree. And it takes nothing to be nice. That has nothing to do with religion. Me, I'm far from religious. I don't believe in none of that stuff. But I am a nice person. I'm a family person. I'm a friendly person. I'm a genuine person. I'm an honest person. That's pretty much it. But the ones who claim to be the holier than thou people happen to be the meanest people. And this is the news flash to this religion stuff. Being mean to people who don't agree with your religion does not make them want to be part of your religion even more. If anything, like that should register in their minds. Being nasty to people, it's like a bully mentality. It's like they try to Suge Knight you and put this fear into you and scare you into being a part of their religion. We cannot stand you mean Christians. They all in the comments when you speak against them, and it just shows or validates our beliefs on why we don't fool with that stuff, and we just notice the hypocrisy in your religion. By y'all.
He said they should knight you. I mean, I happen to agree with him. We know that we don't win hearts with hatred. We win hearts with love. And Jesus understood human nature. He understands it better than we do. And this is why he tells us that we should not seek revenge. He knows that revenge never satisfies the soul. And it doesn't change what we feel inside. Even when you have revenge, you may feel powerful for a moment, but bitterness eventually poisons the person that's carrying it. And the enemy loves it when wounded people produce more wounded people. That is his whole strategy for taking down humanity, is to wound as many people, especially as children, as he possibly can, so that that person doesn't even have a chance to grow up knowing what real love is. And he just keeps producing more of these wounded people over and over. And that's how darkness reproduces itself. In the scripture, Romans 12 and 21, it says, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. Now, notice that Paul is saying evil can overcome you. Evil can overcome you, not just attack you. It can transform who you are. Your pain can reshape your person. And you can be the betrayer. You can become cold. Your trauma can make you dangerous. And eventually, you stop fighting the darkness and start partnering with it. You start partnering with the darkness, and you call it righteousness, and you call it just, and you call it fair. I've watched this happen. Like I said, I've watched this happen to some of my favorite content creators. They start out with a very righteous cause, but they end up being so angry at the perpetrators or the story that they're following that now you can't tell one from the other. They're both screaming at each other. And then they've got somebody on who's going against them, and they spend half the show talking about the comments that were made and why they don't need to answer them. And then it just becomes the same type of information. So we have to use the tools that Jesus has given us. I know it goes against our human nature to do that, but that is the key to the kingdom. We have to learn to answer hatred with love. Not because evil is acceptable, no, but because evil grows when it's reproduced. And it reproduces itself through wounded people. Now, this is very important, very important. Loving your enemy doesn't mean that you stay in abusive situations. All of my people out there in those relationships, that is not loving your enemy, staying in that abusive situation. It doesn't mean that you tolerate manipulation or you play the fool for anybody. It doesn't mean that you don't keep your boundaries and set standards in your life, and you don't pretend that evil is good. That's not what I'm saying. Jesus himself confronted evil constantly, but he did it with love. Remember the woman at the well. He knew that she was living in sin, not necessarily evil, but she was living in sin, but he did not beat her up with that. He told her to go and sin no more. See, love and truth work together. Some people think that forgiveness means that there's no consequences. No, there will be consequences because God is just, but vengeance belongs to him because we humans are terrible judges when we've been emotionally wounded. I mean, what did the disciples want to do? Should we call down fire on them? I mean, that is the type of response that we have. And I thank God that I'm not able to get the vengeance that I've thought up in my mind when I think about people who have wronged me, because in all of that would be all on me. So I thank God that I don't. And I thank God that he is just and righteous. And if I turn it over to him, I know that the right thing is going to happen. In Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 23, it says, the Lord knows that people's lives are not their own, and it's not for them to direct their steps. Thank goodness. God sees the entire story, and we don't. Sometimes people hurting other people are broken themselves, deeply broken themselves. We don't even know what they've been through. Now, that's not an excuse for bad behavior, but you can think about that when you think about why would somebody say that to me or treat me that way or hurt me in that way. If we think about what may have caused them to be this type of person, it can change how we see them. Instead of seeing a monster, we begin to see them as lost or blind or spiritually sick or wounded. And that perspective itself changes how we respond, right? It's like if you come upon a wounded dog, you know that he's gnashing out at you because his leg hurts, not because he's a bad dog or he's a vicious animal. It's because of the pain that he feels. He's in fear that you're going to make him feel more pain if you try to move him or manipulate him in any way. And so we take our time. We're easy with him. We let him reassure him that we're not here to hurt. We're here to help. See, it changes our perspective on and the way that we move. And believe me, what anybody has done to you cannot be worse than what they did to Jesus. And the ultimate example of loving your enemy was Calvary. Jesus was mocked. He was spit on. He was beaten. He was humiliated publicly. He was stripped and hung on a cross for the world to see. And what did he say in Luke 23:24? Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing. He saw humanity the way God always sees humanity, as children, as babies. My brother says that they're all children with forks, looking for light sockets to stick their forks into because they don't know any better. And that changed my perspective. Every time I think about somebody who's done something that I consider to be wrong, they're just babies with forks. They don't really know better. And those who do know better are doing it from a motivation that they don't understand, really. See, that sentence alone destroys human logic because humanity says, make them pay, right? Make them pay. But Jesus says they're blind. They don't see what they're doing. Can you imagine loving humanity while humanity murders you or murders someone that you love? Now that's grace. That is grace. And grace is undeserved kindness. And that is what the Lord has shown to each and every one of us, even today. Even today, I am still a sinner. I still do things that are outside of God's will for my life. I still miss the mark. We all do. But the Lord still loves us. And if we're followers of Christ, we're called to carry the same spirit. The same spirit. Well, if you made it to the end of this video, I want to thank you. If you subscribe to this channel, I love you. Please share this video and ask the person that you share it with to subscribe to the channel. We're moving closer, ever so closer to 1,000 subs. I'm super excited. If you would do me a favor, please like, comment, and let me know what you think of the episode. And we will see you next time on the Candid Wisdom Podcast.